What inspired you to join Special Forces in the first place?
Well, two things did. First one was my dad. I watched the Rambo movies and whatnot growing up. I'm like, oh, wow, Dad's a Green Beret. I didn't know he was a badass like that. And
Right.
so, I watched all those Rambo flicks. Of course, I watched the Green Berets with John Wayne. And so my dad really was an inspiration because, he'd go off for his drill. He was in the active first, then after Vietnam, he went into the National Guard and was in the Special Forces National Guard with the 19th group and 12th group in the reserves. And he'd take off for, different exercises. And what was kind of interesting is when I decided to join and enlist in the Army, my dad was actually supporting Operation Tandem Orbit, this exercise they had out in Hawaii. And I found out, hey, if I go to the MEP station, I could actually go into any MEP station in the United States and they will pay for my transportation to Fort Benning, Georgia. So I came out to Hawaii. I dropped my dad off to work and I had his car rental because he was on TDY and stayed at the hotel with him. So I had a free place to stay, had wheels, and got to do my first trip to Hawaii. And so
you mastered the system early.
Yeah. So I got to watch, kind of, how his lifestyle was and all the fun that he had. And so, obviously at those days, this was 1985, I couldn't go right into SF. There wasn't the 18 X-ray program or anything like that back then. Otherwise, I probably would have done something like that because I'd always played sports and competitions and always pushed myself to be the best that I could be, and no matter what it was, whether it was music, sports, or whatever growing up. So my dad was the first one. And then second, when I enlisted in the Army as a 11 Bravo infantryman and being stationed at Benning and going to all the schools and whatnot, it's like I didn't run into any Green Berets at Fort Benning in any of those cycles. But I did take one trip up right before I ETS the first time. And my dad was on active duty orders again to Fort Bragg. I'm like, I was born at Fort Bragg as an Army brat. Right before my dad went to Vietnam, I'm like, I've not seen it since I was born. So I drove up from Fort Benning to Fort Bragg to come see him. And the same thing, I drove around the vehicle with him. And it was kind of weird. He was a lieutenant colonel. I was a sergeant. And here I am driving around with a Green Beret. He was driving. I should have been his driver. I was the passenger in the seat. And we were driving out to Camp McCall.
Okay.
Got to observe a lot of the training. And so, watching all that happen, my company commander kept on trying to get me to become an officer. He's like, you need to be an officer. And I'm like, no, sir, I'm getting out, going back to school, going back to college. And is at that time, of course, they're trying to recruit me to stay in and re-enlist. But I went through an in-service recruiter to join the 12th Special Forces group, right after I got off my first 3.5-year enlistment.
And your 3.5-year enlistment, that was with 3rd ID at Benning or another unit?
No, I was with the 10th Mountain Division.
Okay.
It was very interesting. In 85, they activated the 10th Mountain Division, first time since World War II, to prove out light infantry. Fort Drum, New York was not ready for the division yet. They moved the division headquarters there, but we were the very first battalion that went through a cohort, one station unit training at Fort Benning. And I was in 2nd Battalion, 14th Infantry Regiment, the Golden Dragons.
Okay.
And we stayed at Fort Benning the entire time.
Wow.
So which was awesome for us, because I got to go to, airborne school on standby, even though we weren't, we were a leg unit. I got to go to Ranger School, got to go to Air Assault School. We went to the Jungle Warfare Training School. We went to the Arctic Warfare in Alaska. We got all this awesome training in the time that I was there, and all these light fighter exercises. We aggressed against the 82nd. We aggressed against the Rangers. I felt like it was my backyard when I went to Ranger School, because I aggressed against them at Benning. I did, we went into Dahlonega. I aggressed against them for post support up in Dahlonega, and also down at Camp Rudder in Florida. So when I went to Ranger School, it was like, okay, we're getting ready to get hit right here. I knew all the backside support for Ranger School.
Very interesting
I know.
background. So with all of that, you apply for 12th Special Forces Group in the reserves. What was
Yes.
the process like signing into that unit and then getting ready to go to selection? And then how was selection for you?
Yeah. So in those days, let's see, I got out in December of 1988. There was two options for you to earn your Special Forces tab. The first one was the reserve process, and it was like 6 phases. You did a whole bunch of correspondence for phase 1, and then you go to 2 weeks at Fort Bragg for your phase 1. You do a whole bunch of correspondence for phase 2, which is really like a phase 3 for us. And then you go to phase 2 for the, I was at 18 Bravo for the weapons phase. And then same thing, there's like a phase 5 and 6 before you go to Robin Sage. And then some guys, it would take them 5-10 years to complete that process through the reserve to come up with enough time to make those active duty school. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to go to the real deal. I want to start and go through the whole thing. So in 1989, in August of 89, I went to SFAS. In prep for that, you search online for different programs to get in shape, did a lot of rucking and PT, and I was always in really good shape back then anyway, always maxed the PT test. And so I was more worried physically than mentally, but even mentally, a lot of those phase 1 correspondence courses that the reserve guys did, small unit tactics, all that kind of stuff. I enrolled in those correspondence anyway.
Okay.
And so it gave me a head start to already know a lot of stuff they were going to teach me when I got to Bragg. So got to SFAS, and I was 21 days during that time. You had your individual events, and then you had your team week type of thing with those, 5 days of 2 events a day. And, some people talked about the G2 and learning a little bit about some of the things you can expect, but really no G2 on how to do the events if you're in a leadership position and whatnot. And I remember it was super hot at Bragg. In fact, I heard they stopped. I don't know if it was right after my class or how soon after. They don't do SFAS in August anymore. We dropped like flies on heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and on the Sandman carry. I know I lost out of my 12-man team that we started with. We were down to 8 and carried those 2 Sandmen with all the big poles and the stretchers and everything.
Oh, yep.
And we got down to only 1. We only had 4 of us left, and I could see the finish line. And I think this was either day 3 or day 4 of that 5-day team week. And next thing I know, I'm in an ambulance with IVs and stuck in me. I was literally like 200 yards from the finish line, and I didn't finish. I was freaking out. I'm like, well, I'm still in the barracks. I'm still here taking all kinds of electrolytes. And I was concerned. I didn't think I was going to get selected. I mean, everything I maxed out, all the everything that we did, the 25 miler at the end, me and this guy Georgievich, which was best ranger competition winner. He and I think he was at the unit behind the fence during that day's coming back through for SF training. He was already in the unit, and he and I were like going back and forth the whole time. You see these bouncing chem lights. We were miles ahead of everybody. And it was a lot of fun on that. But I was still nervous, even though I finished all that stuff, when it came to being in the auditorium and they're calling out different names of people that, okay, is that the group that's selected or not? And oh my God, that guy's really good. Oh, okay. No, that guy's a dud. And you didn't have a clue what group that you were in. And I was a first time go, but it was a great experience to go through that, because SFAS didn't start until I think 1988, about a year before that.
Okay.
Before those days, anyone could get out of their assignment. They don't like their command. They don't like Korea or whatever. Hey, I'm volunteering to go SF. They could come to Bragg. They go through phase 1 of the Q course without the SFAS, and you didn't really get a chance to assess them. And Bragg got stuck with all these folks that couldn't make it through. And they spent most of phase one, instead of teaching, assessing and selecting people, and would be kicking people out. And then they'd reassign to the 82nd, or the Army was spending a lot of money sending them back to another unit for the needs of the Army, because they didn't really have a program back then. It wasn't a TDY, come to it and come back. They were PCSing people back to Bragg for that. So SFAS was a fairly new thing when I went through. And most of the active duty guys, they would align for a class, Q course class, right after SFAS. For us, it was that way. I had to wait for a slot. And so it took 4 months for me to get a slot for the actual Q course.
Okay. And then you came back to Bragg for the Q course
in January 1990. Yeah.
In the Q course starting January 1990, en route back to 12th Special Forces Group.
Correct.
So how was the Q course experience for you, Pete?
That was great. That was fun. The nice thing about the Q course at that date and time was they already did the assessment and selection. So you're not being treated, bad. They're there. You're there to learn, and they're there to try to make sure that you're successful and make it through. Now, if you're a dud, you're a dud, and some guys still slip through because I forget what the attrition rate in SFAS was for our class. It was pretty high, like 80% dropped out. We only had 20% graduate. Q course was a lot different though, because they did that assessment selection. Phase one was a lot of fun. That was, infantry ranger background. I had plenty of, was really good at patrolling, really good at land nav, really good at all of that. And so that was kind of easy for me, especially for the non-infantry background type of folks that as an MOS producing school. So I sailed through that, all of our road marches and whatnot. I run, I was in great shape. So phase one wasn't tough at all. Phase two, when it came for the MOS side, that was just fun. Just playing with weapons, taking apart, going to the range, shooting everything from pistols, handguns, rifles, shotguns, machine guns, light machine guns, heavy machine guns, air defense weapons. All that stuff was just a complete fun time.
And you are 18 Bravo.
18 Bravo, yeah. Okay. Obviously the pucker factor's up with the pile test, where they I think there's 3 weapons they disassemble and throw in a pile, and you got to get through them in a certain amount of time and do your functions check. So there was a couple stressful moments in there, but most of the test and dealing with mortars and dealing with fire direction control and all the academic stuff that you had to study for, most of that was pretty easy for me. I learned that stuff pretty quick. And then phase 3 was fun, getting deployed out into Pineland and going into Robin Sage and linking up with all these guys with the other MOSs for the actual exercise. That was a lot of fun. There were a couple of times in there that were challenging, where we were doing a lot of movement between places. And this was, May still it gets hot at Bragg in May. Completely ran out of water. And all of us carried extra saline solution bags for IVs and stuff. And we all got, cross-trained to do IVs and all of that. But I didn't have a needle with me to give. And I don't know why I was by myself. But I had an IV bag, and I'm like, well, shoot, I'll just drink this solution. It was the nastiest, saltiest crap I'd ever had in my life. It was disgusting. But that just stood out at me, one of those stories behind the scenes. But I'll tell you what, in my life, I was an Eagle Scout. I won a bunch of awards. I swam in the Junior Olympics. I was on state championship baseball teams and whatnot. Up to that point in my life, but I was never as proud as I was walking across the stage and donning the Green Beret for the very first time. Being around guys before that, they're wearing them, like, man, I just want to be like that one day.
Right.
And then be that guy that gets to have that opportunity to be a first time go-to. Is nice not to recycle. I've been lucky my whole career. I was lucky, I didn't recycle in Ranger School.
Oh,
most
great.
people I know recycled somewhere in there. I
Yep.
was always a first time go at everything. Yeah.
So 2 follow-up questions for you there, Pete. Number one, I know how it felt to put that Green Beret on for the first time, but for you, having your dad be a Vietnam era Green Beret, how was that part? Was he able to make the graduation? How did all that go?
I don't know why he didn't make the graduate. That's a great question because he came to my airborne graduation and he tried to jump with me,
Oh, okay.
which was really cool. And I was super proud then because we're sitting there on the ramp at Lawson Army Airfield, and there's my dad in his Green Beret and all stoic, and I'm like, yeah, it's my dad, motherfucker. I thought that was so, and I had pictures of him in the barracks and stuff too, and so I was super proud of that. But yeah, for some reason he couldn't make it. I don't know if it's work or whatnot. He couldn't make it, but yeah, he was definitely proud of me when I came home and
I bet. Yeah.
saw him, and then I really felt I was part of the group and part of the team.
Right.
And the problem I had is I enjoyed it so much. I was supposed to be going to college and getting back to school and get my education. I kept dropping out of school because then we have this reconnaissance mission. We have an AT going down to the National Training Center to go be aggressors and do different things. I kept dropping out of school to go on all these things. A slot for SOTIC came out. Special Operations Target Interdiction Course, Sniper School.
Yep.
You'd never had a reservist ever go to that school. And in those days, this is 1991, they only had 2 classes a year and like 24 slots per class for everybody, all of SOF. Wow. And for Navy SEALs to try to get in, Rangers to try to get in, of course, mostly Green Berets, and a reservist got in. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm dropping out of school to go. So I wasn't getting anywhere with school. I was having so much fun. And it was at that point, my younger brother, who was a military intelligence officer, is like, Pete, dude, if you looked at the pay scale, you see how much officers make compared to NCOs. You love what you're doing. You should become an officer. You should go through ROTC, go to OCS. You should become an officer. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay in the reserves. I'm going to continue going to school. My other younger brother was a business major. I was a business major in college. He got done and graduated before me, even though he was 4 years younger than me, and started working for Pizza Hut, Sherwin-Williams, some insurance company. He hated it. He got 7 days paid vacation. He's making $22,000 a year. And I'm like, wait a second, I am a O1E. I could go back on active duty, 30 days paid vacation, all those 3-day, 4-day holidays every month, do something I love. And it was $36,000 a year. And I'm like, hell, I'm going back on active duty. Where's that scholarship? So I was really torn at this point because they offered me an active duty scholarship, full ride. So I got my college fund, GI Bill, and the ROTC scholarship, but they said, you have to leave the reserves. You can't be a simultaneous membership program. Okay. So I'm like, well, I don't want to do that then. I want to stay in the reserves. But then after some soul searching, I decided to go ahead and take up that scholarship and commit to go back on active duty.
So when you committed to go back onto active duty, you went through a commissioning source. I assume you came out of SF regiment coverage and went regular Army at that point?
Went regular Army. And then that was a couple of interesting things. One, went to the dark side. I became an officer and left the enlisted ranks. 2, the wife I had at the time, she's an ex-wife now, was like, why do you want to go infantry and ranger and SF and all that? Why don't you become an aviator? And I'm like, aviator? I hate aviators. They drop you, this prior to GPS days, they drop you off at the wrong hilltop, and then you got to do all this extra humping. They're back in the rear. They're a bunch of reps. I'm not going to do that. So in ROTC, between my junior and senior year, went to Fort Lewis for advanced camp. And the regiment, I was the #1 cadet out of, I don't know, 7,000 or whatever.
Oh, wow.
Was there. I had an office call with the region commander, who was General Daly, and he was an ex-160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment commander. He's like, we need operators in aviation branch. I'm like, why is everyone trying to push me towards aviation? And then they do a branch display presentation where every branch tries to sell the cadets on, hey, you should be infantry. Hey, you should be armor. No, medical service, artillery, MI, MP, whatever. And the aviator guy comes up. He's got two hot chicks on his arms. He's walking in with his flight suit all zipped down, walks in front of the bleachers. Of course, the helicopters were displayed right behind him. And then he pulls out his wallet. And he's like, man, what am I going to do with all this flight pay this month? Wearing his shades. I'm like, motherfucker. Okay, maybe I should consider this. And so I went home and I was really, really torn because I wanted to go infantry. I actually wanted to go to a Ranger battalion to experience that since I was only Ranger tab, and then go SF, and then go to the unit, go to special mission stuff after that. I wanted to do the full experience. And the guy's like, special operations, you support all those guys. This is what you can do. So I went to the dark side twice. I became an aviator. I put down aviation. They gave me my first choice, and I went aviation.
Okay.
So when I finished Fort Rucker, you get a choice of Black Hawk, Apache. I was number one in my class there too. Black Hawk, Apache, Chinook, or the Kiowa Warrior. And I looked at all the different mission sets, and the Kiowa Warrior attracted me the most. Oh, I could shoot things. I could recon. I could go over there for pre-assault fires, do all this fun stuff. And then I'll go assess for the 160th after I get enough time. They were headhunting me right out of flight school to go to the 160th. And they decided, no, let's not do that. Hey, get some time under your belt. So I went to the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg for my first assignment.
And what year was this, Pete?
This is 1995.
Okay.
At that time. And so had a blast flying helicopters. I just had a great time. It was so much fun. My next assignment was, and I never did anything traditional. So I went to aviation basic course, flight school, 82nd. I went to the scout platoon leader course because the guy was a ex-armor guy. Says, hey, the number one guy, you get to go to the scout platoon leader course. So I got to go to the scout platoon leader course at Fort Knox. Then I put in for the armor advanced course instead of the infantry, or instead of aviation. I put in for infantry and armor to go to, because those were the better officer advanced courses. And I got selected for armor. So I went there and was the number one guy competing for their tactics awards. And like, we can't let this aviator beat all our armor guys. And then I went to the CAV leaders course. And then I got assigned to 3rd Squadron ACR. While I was at the ACR, my squadron commander came in and said, hey, Pete, be in the conference room tomorrow. And I put in a packet to go to the 160th.
Okay.
I got picked up and I had an assessment date for that. He goes, be in the conference room tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And so I do it. And this guy's in civilian clothes there. And I'm in the room with about 30 other officers. And after the end of this guy's speech, he didn't say where he was from, except for he's east of the Mississippi, recruiting for a special mission unit. And I'm like, okay. And I was the only guy in the room that had time and grade, time and service, enough flight hours. And I was in company command, troop command time at that point.
Okay.
And so I had a lot more than my peers. Guys that flew Blackhawks and shit, the Kiowa Warrior had the best operational readiness rate. We flew all the time. We have no simulators. We do everything in the cockpit. So I had a lot more hours, almost twice as many as anybody else.
Wow.
I'd done, 3 JROTC rotations while I was in the 82nd. We went to Bosnia for S4-7, flew my ass off there for 10 months. And so, I already had over 1,000 hours. And I meet this guy the next day for a PT test, swim test, went to his hotel room, took a battery of psychological tests and inventories. And then I didn't hear anything for a while. Months go by. It's like, right, you have an assessment selection course date. And all my warrant officers, they've been around the military and aviation for a while, because I hadn't been. I've been in aviation, 5 years now, 6 years, going on 6 years. They'd never heard anybody ever make it through this assessment selection. And I had no idea what I was going for. You hear different rumors and whatnot. I had not a clue what I was assessing for. And so I get there, and that was much harder than Ranger School, the Q course, SFAS. It was harder than all of that on even the physical side of that assessment selection. And then we did there was a technical side where we flew all kinds of different aircraft, and it was very, very cool. I almost, on the flight back on when I assume was one of my last evaluations, flying in this really cool aircraft that's not in the Army inventory. I was like, this is pretty cool. And I'd heard by that time that if you're in this unit, you're in that unit for the rest of your career. You know,
Oh, wow.
They have sergeant majors turning wrenches on aircraft as crew chiefs. You have warrant officers. We have more W-5s in that unit than 10 brigades put together. It was incredible, the experience. And I was only the 10th commissioned officer ever to assess and be selected, first time.
Congratulations there.
Into this very intense board with like 20 people on the board in this dark room. And it was intense. And when I looked at the packet to prepare for it, went to the SFAS, I'm like, and the 160th, of course, was trying to headhunt me. Night Stalkers don't quit is their motto. They quit all the time to assess for that unit. And they recruit heavily from the 160th, obviously, for the customers and the people that they do. So I'm back into special operations again. I get my orders to PCS and go through this long training regimen, and back into special operations and get put in what they call the DASSER, the black side of SOF, and had 4 great years. Now, so when I said I almost went to the dark side again, for the 3rd time, I almost rescinded my commission. As a commissioned officer, my time is short, 4 years. Then you got to go off to your intermediate level education. And then, okay, maybe you'll get picked up to be the commander to come back. But your time is limited. And I was loving what I was doing and who I was doing it with and all the great missions that we got to do around the world. And, but I looked at the pay chart again. I was like, oh gosh, no, I guess I'll just stay on the commission side and do what I need to do. But it got me back involved with Green Berets and the tier 1 folks, both in the Navy side and the Army side. I got to do a lot of detailed work with 3-letter agencies and did just a whole bunch of really cool stuff behind the scenes. We were the very first guys on the ground in Afghanistan with those agencies, doing stuff, flying irregular stuff to blend into the environment. And it was just the stuff that you read in books and right. That you dream of doing. And so that was a lot of fun. Then it came up time for me to leave the unit and go to ILE. And so I didn't go to the Army Commanding General Staff College. I went to the Navy War College instead. I always liked doing the non-typical stuff. And I always heard that had the best program of instruction of all the schools, and you get your master's.
This is the Monterey location?
No, this was up in Newport, Rhode Island.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. It wasn't the Monterey postgraduate school one. It was the one at Newport, Rhode Island.
Gotcha.
And like other ones, they hand select who's representing the Army at that Navy school. Did well there, and then I got stuck in another questionable decision. The Army, what was best for me is to go, and I already had some XO time before I went and did my Command General Staff College experience. They wanted me to go to the 101st. And one of my former commanders was a battalion commander there, and I can't come to your S3 XO time there. And they were in the hopper 3 months later to go do a 15-month rotation in Afghanistan.
Wow.
My wife is like, not only no, but hell no, you're not doing that. And I'm like, because in that unit I was in for that 4 years, I was gone 3 years of that, 4 years.
Wow.
It was a big toll on the family. We were gone all the time. And so SMD, Special Management Division, said, hey, well, we got a slot for a Special Ops Aviator Planner at USASOC, at the Director of Special Operations Aviation. And I'm like, okay. Oh, and they got a flight detachment. We'll give you a fixed wing transition if you go do that assignment. So I'm like, okay, non-deploying headquarters, fixed wings. Okay, let's do it. So I go to Bragg, back to Bragg, the center of the universe there for special operations, and got heavily involved there with aviation planning. I oversaw operations for the 160th, for the special mission unit that I was just in, and had a great time, working there for General Mulholland. He had me run this Coca-Cola 600, plan the whole pre-race show.
Yep.
Did all kinds
Great
of
event.
Yeah, it was fun stuff. I was in charge of the whole thing, and had a great time at that assignment as well. Then a slot came open. They had a big gutting of the air shop at the special mission unit behind the fence there at Bragg. And they're like, Pete, you're perfect for it. Hey, come to the unit. And so I went through another assessment selection to go to CAG, and became their air operations officer in the S3, and did that for 2 years. That was a lot of fun. Deployed again to a whole bunch, and talking about some spoiled operators with that dream up some great outside the box shit, and that's your responsibility. You don't say no. You find a way to make that shit happen. Hey, how are you going to infiltrate into Iran? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? You're coming up with all kinds of wazoo shit.
Right.
It was a really fun 2 years as a staff guy to support those operators and take full advantage of getting to know them, going to the ranges, shooting with them, deploying with them. That was a great 2 years as well, because it did a lot of really cool missions that I think some of them are unclassified, but whether it was the Jessica Lynch rescue, whether it was capturing Saddam Hussein, whatever it was, going around the world, rescuing hostages and stuff. It was just a pleasure to be there and see the fruits of your labor in your planning. Unlike a lot of other officer jobs where you're doing wartime planning for what may happen in Korea or Taiwan, and you don't see the fruits of your labor. Yeah, you may one day, but there you saw it like all the time when it happened.
So what year is this, Pete?
This is
so
2000.
04,
Yeah, this is I was at USASOC 2007 to 10, and then in the unit 10 to 12. Then General Mangum, who was the former 160th commander, and he was the DSOA commander. Oh, and I was also at DSOA, the Director of Special Operations Aviation, when we built our SOAC, the Army Special Operations Aviation Command. The Army was downsizing a lot of general officers in aviation, just cutting units left and right. While I was there, I helped build and design the RSOAC, which is what it is now. Now it's got a general officer with a bunch of colonels to help oversee the 160th and all of that. They were way undermanned for that type of support. So anyway, the commander of that organization reached out to me in 2012, like, Pete, we need a special ops aviation on the staff. China is very important now. That's the number one thing, blah, blah, blah. We need you in Hawaii. I'm like, Hawaii? Aloha, send me. So as much as I didn't want to leave the unit because I was having a good time there, I probably could have stayed, as long as I wanted there, because I got promoted to lieutenant colonel while I was in the unit there.
Okay.
And I was enjoying my time, and I didn't do the typical stuff that other folks did. I didn't do my full XOS3 time. I was waiting up for battalion command and those things to be able to get selected for 06. So I go to Hawaii, and then got a divorce. My wife had enough. I always put the Army first before my family in every sense of the word. I get to Hawaii, and the guy I was replacing was a Navy SEAL as the Southeast Asia Regional Engagement Branch Chief, kind of oversaw all operations in the Philippines, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Philippines, all those countries. And he's like, dude, man, I go surfing every morning. I come to the office around 9, I'll leave by 2. It's great. And I'd go home, I tell my wife and my daughter, oh man, this is gonna be a great assignment. Be home all the time. 2 months go by, the CG's like, I need a chief of staff at DeSoto P. Like, what?
Oh.
Okay, all right, sign me up, send me to the Philippines. So Joint Special Operations Task Force Philippines, which I had no idea we actually deployed to the Philippines before we even went into Afghanistan after 9/11, after they lopped off the heads of the Burnham family. I go down there to the Philippines, and it was supposed to be a fun 4-month tour. It ended up being a 10-month tour because they couldn't find a backfill for me. And it was a very important time because the Indo-PACOM commander was trying to shut down DeSoto P, trying to save money, blah, blah, blah. And it was a named operation. It was Operation Enduring Freedom Philippines. And what was very enjoyable about that job is the DeSoto P commander, a Green Beret, the Sergeant Major, Green Beret, the J2, the J3. J3 was a Green Beret. They were always up in Manila dealing with their Pentagon up north. We were down in the Joint Operations area, down in Mindanao at a place called Camp Navarro in Zamboanga. And we had outstations there on Holo, on Basilan, all these different islands, covering a big span of place with teams all over the place. And it was fun because I pretty much ran the JOA like a commander would for that entire time. And that was a very enjoyable job going out into the hinterlands.
I bet.
To see our guys and do kind of what we're doing in Iraq and Afghanistan, but we weren't doing it ourselves. It was with our Filipino Rangers and Greenberg, their special forces, and their paramilitary folks that we worked with the agency with for the more special type stuff. And we were even training them to drop precision guided munitions on bad guys.
Nice. And
so I happened to be there during the only time in a peaceful, not combat zone, actually dropping warheads on foreheads was great because I got involved with the highest levels of the Philippine government, obviously the embassy to approve those kind of operations, and all the way up to the Indo-PACOM commander, waking them up on weekends and stuff. So I got to be right in the middle of all of that, which was a lot of fun. And then I got a divorce because I wasn't going to deploy anymore, and then I deployed another 10 months. And my wife and daughter both hated Hawaii. I loved it. Then I got orders for JSOC, and so I PCS back to Bragg after my 3 years was up there at SOCPAC. And then we did a lot of other really cool things while I was there. I was the chief of current operations at SOCPAC, and we had a lot going on in there for preparing for the future current fight. Guys behind the scenes in all the countries. Didn't matter whether it's Burma or Taiwan or wherever, we have guys out there doing great stuff, setting the conditions for potential operations down the road. And me and this guy named Ed Crute redesigned our 3 in this big thing came out in the military called Operational Art. And we redesigned everything that they still use today. In fact, when I went to the Joint Forces Staff College for this course, they were teaching it, and we were the only ones that actually were putting it into practice. And so I took them all to the classified library and, hey, look our website that anyone can come in here and they see all this stuff. It was a COP with everything you could ask for, from the operator getting ready to go into a country to any agency that's getting ready to come into the Indo-Pacific AOR. And then even when I got to JSOC and we were practicing our 0300 mission to deploy around the world, no notice. that capability. They're like, oh, we don't know, when they come out for the Ellipse Charlie exercise, oh, we don't know if there's anybody in Thailand. Like, hold on, guys, let me show you something. It's logged on the computer and boom, here's the teams, here's their phone number. It was something new that I tried to bring both to SOCOM and to JSOC on the COP side of sharing, information, even though it's like tactical level shit. It was stuff that operationally that you could use.
100%. Quite an accomplishment, actually.
Yeah, it was very, very cool. I was very proud of that. And then I'll back up just a little bit. 10 days before I left Hawaii, after my divorce was finalized, I was clearing post and I got invited from a friend to attend a dinner party. And I met my future wife.
Oh, good for you, Pete.
So we corresponded. I knew I was leaving 10 days later. I'm going to Bragg, and we would talk 6-8 hours a day. We could not hang up the phone with each other. And literally the whole time I was at Bragg, every 4-day weekend, I flew back to Hawaii or I flew her to North Carolina. One week we met in Vegas. One time we met in Colorado. My parents had their 50th wedding anniversary. And it got to the point like, wow, this gal is incredible. I wasn't looking for it. It fell in my lap and we are so compatible. I proposed in Kauai on one of our trips. And even though I was up for 06 and promotion, I'm like, she's a special ed teacher. She didn't want to leave her job and, go somewhere another 3 years for assignment. Right. I went and put my retirement paper in. And to put family first for the first time in my career. And so I retired out of Fort Bragg in 2016. And that was a fun job too, because I worked in the JOC there at the headquarters, commanding, controlling all their operations everywhere else that they had going on. And I was their air expert, working hand in hand with all the key folks. And what was beautiful about that assignment is your typical 06s that work with other geographic combatant command 06s. If JSOC could not get what they wanted through the 06 channels, all you had to do, or me as an 05, all I had to do is type up a ghost letter for the CG, send it to the CG, and he sends it directly to the GCC commander. So after we do our prudent through the chain of command, you're wondering how JSOC could work at the speed of light. It's because it's coming straight from the JSOC commander to the GCC commander, and then the shit comes back down here. Hey, you support that request to do X, Y, or Z.
Right.
That was one beautiful thing that I saw. Some people didn't like that, but it was a way to get shit done. And they handpicked their staff officers that they know they did the prudent thing. And of course we briefed them on it too, before they, send something like that. They have confidence in the background work that you did and that you did everything that you could to help enable that requirement that you needed, that decision to get a waiver for whatever. Or to approve, an operation in someone else's battle space. And speaking of that, I need to backtrack. One job I had in the 2002 to 2006 timeframe when I was in that one special mission unit, a lot of people were not happy about JSOC out in the battle space in Iraq. JSOC would come in. They got a high value target. They get the higher deck of cards to go after. And guys were going into battle space, making a mess, capturing or killing whoever we were after, and then we're out. And that battle space commander's got to deal with it. Didn't matter whether it was Army, didn't matter whether it was the Marine sector. We were not playing very friendly, in my personal opinion, at the time. And I talked to the task force commander, and the JSOAC commander in Air Force 06 had to go back home on emergency leave or whatever. The task force commander looked at me like, Pete, can you do this job? I'm like, Sure. So I move up to the head table with the task force commander in the jock. And I'm like, I'm changing this. I'm in a position I can play friendly. So when we got a con op, literally with 24-hour turnaround time to send the guys that are sleeping ready for the night to hit. During the day, I'm making all this shit happen. I am behind the scenes planning all their RASs and their routes and setting up all the ISR because we got tons of ISR, all kinds of assets to support the prep of the objective for the missions.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, I would send it to those brigade talks the same time I'd send it to the KOC, the Combined Arms Center down in Qatar or wherever it was. And I sent to them all at the same time, because in the conventional army, they get their brief, they go fly their missions, and they're flying out there doing their thing. And then while they're flying out there, we choose to go up after a HVT. There was all kinds of potential for mid-airs and issues and fratricide and stuff. I'm like, I'm changing this. So I literally changed it to where they knew kind of the area we were going into, but not specifically who or what exactly. And I built it like an airspace model to where early on before the objective, the higher part of the higher airspace where ISR is, hey, no one can be in that airspace, but people can still fly up and down all day. We did tons of stuff in Baghdad where you had the combat hospital right there, and the medevac wasn't allowed to go through because we put up a RAS and they can't even get to the hospital. I'm like, that's freaking ludicrous.
Right.
It was some of the dumbest things I'd ever seen. And so we allowed that normal traffic, and they did it because they don't want to haunt or let notice, hey, there's still activity going on. Hey, something might happen tonight.
Yep.
They want to clear all that out. I can kind of understand that. But if it was a regular route that the Army uses to go to and from a hospital, let them keep doing their shit. And then as the mission got closer to the time, my RAS that I set up would change and funnel down to where just before the 160th launches with the operators for that half or that gaff or whatever we're doing to go for that HVT, we would set it up. And it worked out fantastic. Everyone was happy. We're communicating. They're like, oh man, this is the first time that you guys actually talked to us. And we worked it out to where, and the task force commander saw that. And so we started, every task force commander from then on out started briefing, and they changed the whole way that we did operations there, just off of that one thing. And then those operations would go target after target. So the HVT's not at that spot. Boom, we came up with new way to transmit a new one-page con-op to the aircraft supporting with the new objective with the different color sides on how they're gonna attack that objective, because someone on the objective would say, oh no, he's over there at this place.
Right.
We'd go do another hit right afterwards from that objective to that objective. And we'd do sometimes up to 6 a night. And guys would be flying 12 hours. It was intense every night. I mean, we tried different battle rhythms while I was assigned there, from 45 days, 90 days, 120. We wouldn't do more than 120. Guys were burnt out. Guys, and then going back to civilization, recock, and then come back into theater. It was just constant rotations, and it really burned people out. And we tried 45 days even, and that's expensive. You buy out a whole C-17 to rotate these guys out, and we were literally coming 90 days back home for 180, come back for another 90 days, and it was just constant during that time. But anyway, that was a pretty cool lesson learned story. Absolutely. For that community to play a little bit more friendly with theater SOF and with the rest of our brothers and the conventional army. That unit started doing a little bit more overt recruiting during those days as well, to recruit to that organization.
Yeah, it's my hope that the people who are listening understand how difficult it is to innovate in these environments, right? These innovations are giant leaps forward, but you're in a culture that that doesn't have a lot of innovators. So,
Right, right. And
really an incredible achievement.
that is one of the things I enjoyed most about those special units was the people and the resources, obviously, and the RDTD that unit gets first to try the next best weapon, to try the next best aircraft or whatever kind of support the operator needed on the ground. The time and effort and how quickly you could go from an idea to having it in theater supporting you with a combat need statement was incredible. And we really made leaps and bounds from the beginning of 9/11, 2001 timeframe, where we were at that time to where in 2016 when I retired, how far it had progressed. And of course, I'm sure they're still doing that stuff today.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I want to close out here with two different portions. Number one, assuming this video lives on, I'm certain that the listeners want to get your insights into, generally your view on how to be, a great SF soldier, how to be a great aviator. Those come to the top of my mind. But what are those insights that you would like to leave for posterity?
Yeah, a couple of things. It used to piss me off when I'd see, and I learned this when I was enlisted. Guys would go out there and do PT or do a PT test, and they get up and they do the minimum, and they get up and they still have time left to go. I'm like, you have 2 minutes. How hard is it to do as many push-ups as you can in 2 minutes? And so one of my things is, hey, you're already there. You're already awake. Be the best that you can be. It always benefited me to be the soldier of the month, the soldier of the quarter, the NCO of the month, the NCO of the quarter, NCO of the year, getting promoted ahead of my peers, which meant more money in my pocket, more schools, more fun, more respect. I'm like, just push yourself to be the best you can be. And so that's what I'm doing today, representing the Special Forces Association, is giving back. So in retirement, I'm members of the American Legion, VFW, Disabled American Vets, 10th Mountain Division Association, but it's the Special Forces Association that I have a special fondness to. And even though my Green Beret portion of my career was a very short portion of the overall soft career, I'm giving back in a very heavy way now. I'm the president of my chapter out in Hawaii.
Oh, congrats.
I am part of the National Team House. I'm on the SF for Life committee at National, and I've thrown all kinds of great ideas of where we were originally, it was just a member database. And we were only using it to, when we first thought of SF for Life, to help people transition from the military. I'm like, man, this site could do so much more. What if we add this, 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 and this? Now you can search for your buddies on there. You can find someone that we've had people come to Hawaii that ride motorcycles, and they can literally go into Team House and say, hey, who rides a motorcycle in Hawaii? Well, Pete does. Hey, and I know people that have spare bikes. Don't rent a bike at $200 a day. Come borrow one of mine, and I'm going to ride with you and hook a brother up. That's what we do. We've had 18 guys I've had to bury, Vietnam era guys, in the last 3 years in Hawaii since I've been president, and helping those spouses and those families with their burials, to pay honor to our brothers. Our chapter is the longest continuous chapter in the entire SFA.
Oh, I didn't know that.
During COVID, when COVID shut down Hawaii in a big way, but we never missed a meeting. We went right into Zoom, and we've done Zoom meetings every single month. Even now that we're back together in person, I still do Zoom meetings. I still have 5 or 6 guys that can't make the meeting, so they Zoom in from their car, from the other island, they're traveling on the mainland. They want to stay engaged. General Fenton, the commander of USOCOM, he's still in our chapter. He still wants to stay engaged, and he'll pop into a meeting. You just never know. I get together with others. So we got 90 members, 90 Green Berets in our chapter. But I retired in 2016. in the last 8 years, I've built up a database of 360 Green Berets that live in Hawaii. And these are just guys I run into, it's a little fishbowl out there. And you're wearing an SFA shirt or a SF hat or whatever. Like, oh, I was in group. Hey, you were too. And you get known. And I collect it. And I'm the only one that has this information. I need to get it, where someone else has data in case something happens to me. But I've built this roster of all these guys. Then we have this newsletter called the Coconut Wireless. And it was originally for just SFA. And I'm like, I brought up in my meeting, I'm like, no, let's share what we're doing with everybody. So we put all of our activities out there. We do pauhanas, which is a Hawaii name for like after work, have a drink and poo-poos, appetizers.
Oh, okay.
So we pick a different place on the island every single month. I pick a place. I invite the guys from Sock Pack, invite everybody through the Coconut Wireless to come and just network. You don't have to be SFA, but if you're a Green Beret, I want to hook a brother up. We had a guy looking for a job. He didn't even have a clearance. And because of our network, we were able to get him a job at Sock Pack, get him a secret clearance to go work in our training section.
That's great.
We have guys, we're there to help people out. And so I'm a big advocate of this team house, and I'm really excited about next year. No chapter stood up to run the SFA convention for next year. So I hit up my chapter and they're like, yeah, Hawaii, we tried this back in 1978. And, a lot of people canceled out. It was too expensive to come out. Great things to see. People, it's a life dream. It may be a great venue, but my chapter wasn't ready to jump on it. But I jumped on the grenade. I volunteered my chapter to run the cruise next year. So we are planning a global, and I've been talking to Kevin Harry about this for a while. I'm like, hey, since no one's coming up with a convention, this is the kind of person I am. Let's do it on a cruise ship. Let's invite every Green Beret of every era, active, National Guard, retired, ETS, whatever your status was. If you're a Green Beret, let's get on this ship. Let's reconnect. Let's bring in the best speakers and symposiums. We could do a convention on a ship and have a great time. You don't have to drink and drive. They have all kinds of great shows. It's unlimited eating. It's just going to be a fantastic time. So we're doing a SFA con on the ship next year. And then I'm going to plan a bunch of activities since we're going to go out of Tampa, prior to that. And I'm talking with General Ferguson and General Braga, General Fenton, all these guys to treat this like Christmas. Minimum manning, half-day schedule.
Right.
Allow your guys, make sure they all know about this opportunity. Let's sell out this ship. And so I'm super duper excited about that. I'm excited about SFA and where we're going, and this Team House app and website that we have. I'm really trying to promote it because people just don't know the capabilities of how they can connect, how they can PCS to another group while they're on active duty, and not just have one sponsor. You got a couple hundred sponsors that you can reach out to find out about schools, to find out about jobs, because most of them retired from that group that you're getting ready to go to.
Yep.
You can reach out globally. When you get out of the military, you want to write a book, you want to become a cop, you want to be a doctor, you want to be whatever. There's somebody in our association that's done that job before. And now you can reach out to them through that app to do that. I started a little interest tab. If you like doing CrossFit, you like to go fishing, you like to ride motorcycles, you literally could go on a map, pull up your place and go within 75 miles of where you live and see other guys and call them up and like, hey, brother, you want to go ride bikes? You're a fellow Green Beret. You like doing the same shit I do? And let's get together. There's so many great stories that I've heard, especially those guys that don't live near a group. They go to Cody, Wyoming in the middle of nowhere. They don't know anybody. No one assigned them a sponsor. There is none of that when you ETS or retire. Boom, you can go on a map and boom, there's 20 other SF dudes in the vicinity of Cody, Wyoming. Hey, let's go to the local pub and let's meet each other. And they can start the same kind of thing we have in Hawaii. Right. Everybody, it's win-win for everyone. And so you can see I'm pretty passionate about it. I love it. I'm trying to, Kevin Harry, he's been giving, he just talked about in the convention here, giving 100 lifetime memberships out, through different sponsors to honor grads and stuff. Well, that, to me, that kind of sucks. That's only 100 guys that came into our association. I would rather spend instead of $480 per person for 100 guys, that's 48,000. Look, that's 1,100 annual memberships that you every Green Beret that graduated the last 3 years could have got an SFA membership, learned about this app that they could use for their life, and we could have expanded our association in a big
The value
way.
prop would have spoken for itself, for sure. Yeah.
Now we're getting ready to do that.
Awesome.
With the money we're saving from the drop. So
The last question for you. Parting shots, whatever you want to close out with. First, I'd like to thank you for taking all of this time to tell your story and really dive into it in a way that most people don't. So any parting shots that you have, we'll be happy to take those before we close out here.
Yeah, it's just, if you look at SF for life, what does that mean? And for me, it means I'm supporting my brothers for the rest of my life. Didn't matter if whether you spent 1 year and got out, doesn't matter if you're 92, whatever age you are, is to help our brothers out, especially if you have the means to do so, to volunteer to be a mentor, to volunteer to help others that are less fortunate. I've been very fortunate in my life. I've saved up a lot of money. I continually try to help out in every way that I can. And as you see our suicide numbers, as you see the mental health of some of our folks, I had a guy that I was just helping out quite a bit. I didn't get word back that he committed suicide, but he died, and he's only 40 years old. Mm-hmm. And they haven't told me exactly how he's died yet, but I was really helping that guy. I spent probably 60 hours with him over the last 9 months, helping this guy get on track, getting on his feet. And he was a pretty stubborn guy. But yeah, that's my parting shot. Guys need help. And some of our older guys are not tech savvy. They're not going to get on Team House. They're not going to, and they don't know what they don't know. And so it's for us to reach out to these guys that may need help. And sometimes their wives don't know who to reach out to. And so I'd like to see our younger generation. A lot of our SFA chapters out there are the Vietnam era guys. 75, 80% of them are. There's very few young guys in those chapters. We need to change that. They need help. They need that young blood in the chapter to keep that chapter alive and really help each other for life. It's win-win for everyone.
That's what brotherhood truly means, right, Pete?
Yeah, brother. Yep.
So, Pete, Skylar, I really want to thank both of you for doing this. Pete, we're going to be talking after the interview.
Sure.
I've got some questions, and I had a really fun time listening. And I was thinking earlier, I want to be that guy.
Yeah, if you saw the view in the back of my life, or the back of my house, my name is Pete Aloha on Facebook. Come check it out. You're like, oh my God, that guy. Yeah, I have a pretty special life, surrounded by, family, friends. You get what you give. 100%. And I give a lot. And in return, I get a ton of love back. And it's made me really happy. I've had, I got PTSD, had TBI, I've all those same things. I've gone through cognitive behavioral therapy. I've had a lot of the same issues other people have had that have issues. It's finding those things and that social environment and having that brotherhood to help you out. I ride motorcycles with the Special Forces Brotherhood Motorcycle Club, and and they're growing. It's just that out to hang with your brothers and be that team after the team.